tempted to sing a solo now, but I won't.
There you are. So I thought, in place of sermon, I could just have some conversation with my friend and fellow priest, Jeremy Howard, and get to share something of his experience and his sense of God in the church. So we met in our early 20s. Jeremy was one of the first people with Anne who welcomed me when I was a stranger in the strange land of Oxford, and we've been friends ever since. And when I met you, we were both really conscious of being called to the priesthood, that was what our life was. How did you come to that, and what did that mean to you, do you think?
Just delving back into my history a little bit to answer it, I think. I came from a Church of England family, an Anglican family, but we had lapsed. We weren't going to church. And then suddenly, really, quite suddenly, when I was 15, I decided I wanted to be confirmed. And I have to think now that was a moving of the Holy Spirit in my life. And coming back to church meant that we became much more part of the community. Meant that I met my wife, which was a great thing. And I suppose I had a deepening sense of commitment as the years went on. I didn't at first think I wanted to become a priest, but the more I continued worshipping and praying within church, it became a sort of certainty, and I just knew that's what I felt God was calling me to do. So there was a suddenness about deciding I wanted to come back and worship in church, but a gradual nature of that priestly vocation.
Mm-hmm. And what do you figure is the essence of being a priest? What's the heart of that?
You can cheat really and say, you could say very quickly, a priest in any sense, and not just in the Christian religion, but any priest offers sacrifice. And so I would say that at the very heart of the priest's life is the offering of the Mass, offering of the sacrifice of the Mass. But I want to go beyond that, and I would say something like it's bringing Christ to the people and the people to Christ. And there's an assurance that the priest can bring to people, particularly through the sacraments, that Christ is with them and blesses them and helps them in any situation. So, for example, when the priest hears a confession, it's not that anybody can listen to people, and if you've had an argument with somebody, they can even say, I forgive you. But when the priest pronounces that forgiveness, it's in the person of Christ, and it's in the name of the whole church. So there is that assurance of pronouncing that Christ is with you in that sacrament and in that situation. So I think I'd say something like that.
It is a privilege, isn't it?
It is a huge privilege. I remember I was as you know, after I became a Catholic priest in 1997, I became a full-time hospital chaplain for nearly 16 years. And I was asked by my then Archbishop, when he ordained me as a Catholic priest, what was the best and the worst aspect of my job as a hospital chaplain. And I said, well, Your Grace, they're the same really, because being called out at 2 or 3 in the morning, I have to say I was never in a good mood. And I'm not normally a quick one to get up, but Anne will testify that when the call came in the middle of the night, I was always quite fast, and I got in the car and I grump along thinking, oh no. But then that sense of privilege, I think, kicked in. And so that was one of the best things in the world that you could do, even in terrible circumstances. I mean, one of the worst things in the sense that I was always told to do was to baptize a child, and I covered a women's hospital for some time, to baptize the child shortly before death. And that was always a shattering experience. but again, you had that feeling that you were able to provide something, that God was using you, and that felt right. Sitting in interminable committees on the hospital management structure, you didn't feel that,
No.
really.
Yeah, those moments of crisis with people, especially those who are far from the church, I've found. There's just a real sense of the Spirit with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think which is, that's always good, isn't it? I mean, in my life, particularly as a hospital chaplain, which was a large part of my life as a Catholic priest, the good thing was that you met people who wouldn't normally come to church. As you were walking around the wards and talking to people and meeting people, both relatives and patients and staff, you would see people who wouldn't come up and knock on your presbytery door or vicarage door or rectory door. And that was always a huge thing. And one of the things I remember was that, again, when I was a hospital chaplain, there was a priest that was very helpful to me, and I used to help him in his parish. And he had first, we have first confessions when children are preparing for First Holy Communion. And he always said, I'd like you there as another priest to say to any of the parents, would you like to make your confession? And that was a real joy, because people they just feel moved as they saw their child to come to confession as well. And they say, oh, Father, I haven't been for a long time, expecting you to shout at them, and of course you don't. And they say, I can't remember the words, and I say, it doesn't matter, just say what you want to bring to the Lord. So yeah, it is a privilege, isn't it?
Yeah.
So people who've been away from the church.
Absolutely. Is there one thing that you kind of really wish that really hoped and prayed that your people would get about being Christian?
Yes, of course. In a sense, I could duck out of that by saying I'm just retired as a parish priest, but I'm still responsible for some groups of people and all sorts. And I think it would be that sense of commitment and of belonging that you can find in the Acts of the Apostles. I love that passage at the beginning of Acts 4, where the ideal Christian community is mentioned. And I find that moving every time I read it or hear it, that they would go together, they would pray together, but not only that, but that they cared for each other, and none of them were ever in want. And I think sometimes you want that sense of commitment and of being part of that body of Christ. And I think sometimes when people don't get that, when they turn up at Sunday Mass, but they're not so sort of committed in other ways, I think.
That some people going through the motions perhaps, and you wish they could.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I've had a lot over the years to do. I've done a lot over the years, as you know, in the field of interfaith relationships, and particularly with our Jewish sisters and brothers, and also with Muslims as well. And I've been struck by many of them as to how much they see their faith as a way of life, how they're almost unembarrassed about it, how it affects everything. Of course, if you're an Orthodox Jew, you have so many regulations, and you say, well, what's the point of all this? And they say, well, it just marks our life out. Our life is marked out. And I wish we as Christians would that. We're almost embarrassed by our faith as Christians. In a hospital chapel, sometimes you would share space with people of other faiths. In an ideal situation, there would be other faith prayer rooms as well. But if people came in and found Christians praying, they'd almost look embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm praying. Whereas a Muslim person, for example, would just carry on. They'd be unashamed about it. Yeah.
A good model for us to.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
You mentioned that you became a Roman Catholic priest.
Yeah.
And you and I, marriages are kind of reverse images. You became a Roman Catholic and Anne remained Anglican.
Yes.
And my wife became Roman Catholic and I remained Anglican. You want to say something about being together but separate, or separate and together, and making that work as a sharing Christianity but not the same church?
I think you have to, first of all, respect each other's boundaries. And I think some of these things are good guidelines for relationships between people, not just within a marriage, for example, but also within, for Christians of different denominations, and even people of different faiths coming together. You have to respect the boundaries. And I keep forgetting who said, good fences make good neighbours. Mm-hmm. In a sense, if you can respect what's there, then you can be much happier. And I think don't dwell on the things that aren't possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not hiding the fact that it's a sadness that we can't receive communion together in the way that we did while I was still Anglican. But don't dwell on those things, I would say. Be creative, do things that you can do together. I mean, it's wonderful that Christians, for example, can easily pray together. But within different communities, focus on, as I say, what you can do, not what you can't do. And I think I'm slightly changing the subject by talking about different Christian groups and also different faiths. But I think that holds for a marriage as well, to sort of work out what is possible, you know, and to build on that.
In a sense, this morning is an example that
exactly.
church worship.
Exactly. And when I was a hospital chaplain, because as a Catholic priest, because my mass was on a Sunday afternoon, I didn't go every week, I've got to be honest. I could pretend here, couldn't I? But to be truthful, I didn't. But it was much more possible for me to go sometimes with that on a Sunday morning. And it's slightly weird, having just retired a few weeks ago. I'm not sure what the pattern will be, but one will develop, and you know you're able to do things together.
What haven't I asked you that you wished I'd asked you?
I sort of had an idea you'd ask that. It's telepathy, I think, I've been thinking about that, and it's always a difficult one. You get asked things like that at the end of a job interview, don't you? And your mind just dries, doesn't it? If you nothing really. But no, I've been thinking about it. I think one of the things that really frightens me in our world today is an increasing hatred between different groups. And I mean that on many levels. Political hatreds, and I know that's a problem in the US, and it's a problem in the UK as well. And I see the rise throughout the world, really, of people who preach fear of other groups and other peoples. And that, to me, is dangerous. I've been involved in Holocaust remembrance for years, and you can just see that if you look at the beginnings of the Holocaust. And that's where you're going, I think, if you go down that road of fear and division. So I think the priest, any Christian leader, or any faith leader, really, I think has a role in teaching their people not to be afraid, not to fear other people who are a bit different from them. I think that's the thing I feel, you could feel it as I'm saying, I feel passionately about that. And I think it's such a danger here in the US and to us in England and in Europe and in all sorts of places as well. And I think the priest is well suited to make clear to people not to be frightened of that. So, for example, coming together as Catholics and Anglicans or Catholics and all sorts of stuff doesn't mean that we stop being Catholics. It doesn't mean that we pretend that there aren't differences and divisions between us. And I think I'm going back to some of my earlier answers, but I think that the thing is not to be afraid, not to fear others who are different than you.
We've got a common humanity and among Christians a common faith to build on.
Exactly. Yeah. But since the Second Vatican Council, I mean, it's now 60 years since the declaration of the Second Vatican Council of the Catholic Church on relationships with people of other faiths, Nostra Aetate, which I always thought was quite a modern document, but because I'm now very old, it's actually 60 years old. We have some celebrations about that, which I'm attending not long now in Birmingham in England. But that taught people, it changed the attitude of the Catholic Church to say that there are things that we can respect and esteem in people of other faiths. I've already done that, haven't I, when I said about the unashamed way that my Muslim colleagues and friends in the hospital would worship for example, and the commitment in daily life of some of my Jewish colleagues. So I think I think particularly as priests, we can explain that because we respect some things about other faiths and other people, and we shouldn't be afraid of them, we're not diluting our own faith. I used to work with somebody when I was a hospital chaplain who spoke about plasticine. Do you use the same word here? Because quite often I find you'd say a word and people don't understand. But you know the sort of thing you play with as a child. And it came in all sorts of different colours. And you think, oh, that's fantastic and it looks great. Within about an hour or so, you'd made it into a sludgy, muddy colour because you'd mixed all those colours. But we don't want to be like that. We want to have our own distinctive character and nature, but be able to mix with other people, if that works as a metaphor. My wife found she hates a bad metaphor, so I'm going to get it if she doesn't like this one, but I think she's looking all right with that, yeah.
Father, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this thing. I'm a bit embarrassed to sort of sit before you disguised as a human being, but thank you. It's very delightful. It's been fascinating with you, and I wish you all the best in this congregation, particularly in the restoration of your church. But I was just saying to Anne as we came in, I think you've arranged this so well. I didn't get a sense of, I'm worshipping in a hall. It feels very church-like and devout to me, and lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much.